the way that they go.
Because I used to have to go out to
Milford.
every day.
Yep.
Yep.
You hit one, you can hit it 3 times. Long, slow train. She's here, wonderful.
The train stopped a whole bunch of people.
Lori said that's it. We're glad you're here.
And we're not complaining.
We love
love
our
it.
trains.
You could just come right through it.
Except when you need to, right. Well, there's that. Yeah.
Good.
Nice. Carol? Carol? Barb? Debbie?
She has the BSNA information for me to export it, so I have the parcel number and the zoning.
Terrific.
But then it's a little bit easier. I mean, usually you have
What are your requesting, Debbie? BSNA info for what?
the export file of the BSNA info, the parcel number, and the zoning package.
Hello.
Hi, how are you? All right, how are you?
Export file
In Excel of all the tax parcels.
Oh, I love that.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for your patience. I'd like to call the Planning Commission meeting for the Village of Holly to order for January 23rd, 2019. If we could all stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okie dokie. If we could have roll call, please.
Bukowski.
Yes.
Christian. Clevin has been excused. Steele.
Here.
Putz.
Here.
Hayhoff.
Here?
Goldsmith.
Here.
Hillis has been excused. Kinnaman.
Here.
Thank you. Need a motion to approve the agenda as it was amended.
So moved.
We have a motion.
Support?
Support. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Approval of the agenda. All right. I hope everybody had a chance to read through the minutes from October 24th, 2018.
Somebody excuse them, 2 members.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right. Need a motion to excuse Sandra and George. They both called in.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, so moved. All right, back on to the minutes for October 24th, 2018. I know, Richard, you weren't here, so...
That looked good to me. No.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Support?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we'll have approval of the minutes October 24th, 2018. Could I have someone read the statement of purpose for the village? Any volunteers?
The mission of the Holly Village government is enhance our community's quality of life. Our organization strives for quality services, responsive action to citizens' requests, and a cost-effective government. We promote citizen participation, proactive decision-making, and environmental quality. Most importantly, we shall always serve the citizens of Holly. The village of Holly will be a prestigious historical village that is green residential oasis for the city. and the center of commerce and activity for the region.
Thank you. We do not have any public hearing tonight. Item number 7 is public comments. If there's anyone in the public audience here that would like to get up and state their name and address and speak about anything that is concerning you, please do so at this time.
Not this.
Seeing no one rush to the microphone, we'll go on to number 8, which is old business, which is none. Item number 9, new business. Item 1, the presentation regarding the village becoming a redevelopment-ready community, acronym is RRC, presented by Dominic Roman.
How you doing tonight? I'm Dominic Romano. I'm the Community Assistance Team Specialist for Region 10 of the MEDC, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. And really what that means is people ask me for money, and when I don't give it to them, I get thrown under the bus. But no, I'm just kidding aside. So no, really what my purpose here tonight is that I work with communities in Southeast Michigan, and as a part of our services and things that we offer to communities in assisting them in what they do every day and try to help themselves grow in the ways that they want to grow, we go and we speak and we talk about those things. We try to educate. And so I was asked to come and speak on behalf of our Redevelopment Ready Communities program. It's basically one of the technical assistance programs that we offer at the MEDC's Community Development Division to help Michigan communities across the state grow to be more, economically viable, vibrant, and use tools and what they have, their assets, to celebrate who they are in the best way and grow in the best way that's relative to what the community wants, right? Because that's really what it's about. It's us. Our community development department supports Michigan communities, and that's our #1 client. So tonight, you've been passed out some slides of a presentation. Unfortunately, I don't have the right adapter for the screen, so if you could just follow along with the slides, we could just go through them. I'll try not to bore you too much about them. Really, the Redevelopment Ready Communities program is a self-help technical assistance program that we staff at the MEDC. It is basically, what does the community do every day? And how does it affect how they grow, what they do, what are the rules, how do you encompass what the community really wants, how do you use that to protect yourselves and your identity, and the assets and the infrastructure and all the good things that you have in your community working together in the best way. On the second page, there's a diagram. It's kind of the makeup of the MEDC at a very, very high level. The MEDC is made up of 3 main parts. The one you probably recognize the most is the Pure Michigan campaign. That is our internal, external marketing campaign, goes global. You know that all day long. Business development is a division of the state, of the MEDC, that basically helps to create jobs. And that's either through attraction or expansion of businesses across the state. And so we have a team that addresses that. And there are certain things like international trade and other things, capital access and things like that they use. And then there's community development, which is our team, which is made up of a bunch of teams as well. We're about making place. And what are the ways that you can, have conversations and start initiatives and maybe get some funding assistance to do projects or to learn more about how your community works or other things.
Mr. Romano,
yes.
Say that again. You're about making place. Is that what you said?
Yeah, so which I'm kind of going to get to in a little bit, but really it's about, when we talk about the important pieces that make Michigan a great state, It's about the places within Michigan that people celebrate or go to. They go to on vacation, or maybe it's a place where they can work. Today, a lot of young professionals and even retirees are looking for that place to be, to live, to work, to make friends, to sell their goods, to start a new adventure. And so we focus in on, are you making it a priority to make your community a good place, a great place, a memorable place, something that has special, unique assets that you're celebrating and you're working toward to preserve, and maybe grow or to make to promote more. So on the third slide, redevelopment ready communities, it's basically the foundation of our organization for community development. It's basically the first step for communities to access assistance through our department, the Community Development Department at the MEDC. And it basically is that ground level. What are, how are you planning for your community? What are the rules that you draw from that plan and that vision, and how you can help to steer that vision? Do you have an overarching vision about how you promote your community? Those sort of things. And that's all woven into the Redevelopment Ready Communities program. On the fourth page, basically it says, Redevelopment Ready Communities is a way to empower communities to shape their future by establishing a solid foundation to retain and attract business, investment, and talent. There's a lot of ways that it does that. And it teaches, or it gives examples of other communities across the state, or we have trainings and things like that that can show you, what are some good ways to look at what you're doing, see what other people are doing, and how that applies to your community in the best way. And it's a program that allows, at the base level, a third set of eyes to take a look and see, what you're doing, what are the good things you're doing, and how can we highlight those? And then also, where are some things that need adjustment? Or is there something missing that's vitally important for your community, for its future? We're not going to come in and solve all your problems. That's not what it's all about. It's about giving you tools and examples and things that you can use or not use. It's up to you. It's your community. We want to be able to give you good techniques and strategies on how to make it a better community. And that's all about you deciding and how these things can fit and be used for your purposes. But it is a certification program, and so there are some things that we go through, and there are best practices that I'll get to in a little bit that help kind of define what those steps are and what some of those methods are that are great and have been successful in other communities. On the fifth page is this diagram that we use in a lot of our departments. It's the place, talent, business diagram. And basically what that is, like I had mentioned before, a lot of young talent, retirees, even mid-level workers, they're looking for a place. They're looking for an experience. And sometimes they're looking for it before they're even looking for a job. They want to make it work somewhere because that's where they want to live for a long time. So they're looking for a place, and so these things can support each other. If you don't have a good place, talent's not going to go there. Businesses aren't going to want to go there because there's nobody to work in their company. So we're trying to make a connection that that helps everybody. On the sixth page, the Redevelopment Ready Communities program has a set of 8 guiding principles, and these are overarching kind of ideals of what this is about. It's about preserving community vision. It's about having a predictable way of running your community. From a development firm that wants to do a project in your downtown to a neighbor who just simply wants to put a shed in their backyard. What's the process? Can they go online? Can they see what the fee schedule is? Do they know who to talk to or what form to fill out? It's predictability, accountability, clarity of how to get things done in the best way, and so that everybody, including your offices here, know that it's being done right and the way that the Village of Holly wants it to be done. And you're proactive about it. You're taking the steps now to make it work for the future, and that's great. So on the 7th slide, there's a map. We maintain a map on our website. It's miplace.org. And actually, the map that's on this slide is a little outdated. I provided a map to Ms. Hughes that's got an updated version. There's 250 communities in Michigan that are engaged in this program. 31 of those communities are certified fully. We have a number of them that are in the program waiting for their evaluation. We do like a baseline evaluation when communities come in, and it basically sets the stage on what things can you tweak or work on, or what things do you need to go after to hit on those best practices and complete the program. And so you can see it's all over the state. From the smallest places to the biggest municipalities, we're working with these communities. And in some cases, you would think they might, the bigger places might have a big, great team in their back pocket, and sometimes they're not really doing that great. And they think they're on a good path, but we've discovered that some of the communities that are that have that small team of dedicated staff that have been there for years, that are tuned in a little bit better. So on the next page, on 8, these are the 6 best practices that RRC is based on. Our team works with an advisory committee. They're local officials. They're professionals from planning and engineering firms, and it changes from time to time. It's professionals from professional chapters, academics, and they basically have taken, over the years, these 6 best practices have been developed from those industries and from professionals all over the place, and put into these 6 things. And I'm going to go through them a little bit, just real quickly, each one. So best practice 1 is community plans and public outreach, and this is basically the long-term planning. It's how often are you updating, or how new is your master plan? Do you have a citizen participation plan? Maybe you're already doing some things to reach out and tell people about what you're doing, but is it in writing, or is it accessible? And what types of things are you using, and what things could you be using really easily to let people know what the village is doing? It also includes capital improvement plans. There are a lot of communities around the state that have capital improvement plans, but they're 5 years, and the law actually says you're supposed to have 6 years. So that's what we look at with those. On page 10, it's about what are the goals, the actions, how are you going to implement those things, and who's responsible to do it. That's really important, especially when you're talking about doing big ticket items that you'll find on your capital improvements plans. You want to know what are the goals and how are you planning down the road to handle a street improvement, or buying a piece of equipment like a backhoe or something like that. That's going to cost a little bit more and that sort of thing. So you're not handcuffing yourself down the road in the future. Making sure that these plans and strategies coordinate with your budgets and all that stuff, which is really important. On the next page, you'll see the second best practice, zoning regulations. How does that zoning regulation match up with your master plan? Does it really encapsulate the intent of what the community vision is through that master plan? And are there ways of doing that just make much more sense to your village than it does to somewhere else? And trying to take a look at that. On the next page, it talks about some of the things that the RRC team look at. Do you have a mix of housing types that's makes sense for your community? Are you looking at things more than just roads and streets? Do you have a community of bikers? I mean, would it be out of the realm to try to start to weave in some of those things that would support, the biking community or hiking or that sort of thing? Is there parking regulations that just don't match up with the types of businesses that you have? And how can you look at those, and what other strategies there are out there that make sense for your community? The next page, it's a development review process. And basically, from beginning to end, is it clear on what needs to be done for that person just putting that shed in their backyard to somebody that wants to redevelop or infill develop a property in the downtown? What does it take? Who do they need to talk to? What's going to get them through the process in the best amount of time where it makes everybody in the community feel more comfortable about bringing somebody in if you're going to have that kind of change that's decided upon by what you do locally, right? So, again, on the next page, it kind of goes into more depth about the development review process. How transparent is this review process? What are the roles? Who's taking on different parts of that process? Who should have the file at this point or that point? And what's the timeline? And how can you find, if somebody walks up to your front desk and says, "I'm so-and-so and I have an adjustment to the plans," you know exactly who they need to go to at that given moment in time, because you've put that process in place that's predictable and easy to navigate. And then the next slide, slide 15, recruitment and education. It's important to know, as you probably know, you look at a lot of complicated things here, things that the normal person in a community wouldn't normally look at. How do you prepare somebody who's assigned to a commission, or what's a good practice of tracking trainings or looking for those free opportunities for training for your staff? Is it being tracked not only for your staff but your elected officials and your appointed officials as well? And what are ways you can implement more strategies for training, either paid or free, for the future? So that's best practice 4, actually. 5 is redevelopment ready sites. And this is a best practice that basically is the hallmark of this program way back. It was one of the first things that they really wanted to do was, a lot of communities have properties that are publicly owned, and they're just maintaining them. Or maybe there are a couple of owners that have properties that just don't have the means and are willing to talk to your office and say, you know what, I really would like to move this property. And people walk down the street and they see a particular site and they say, wow, that would be great if we had this there. Redevelopment ready sites best practice basically says pick those 2 or 3 sites in your community, preferably publicly owned, because it's ultimately about site control. And what would you want with that? How would you get your dream development there? It could be a park. It could be a mixed-use development. It could be something that you've always wanted there. And how do you make sure that you're doing the right things so that happens, right? Or you get as close as possible. Because, it's a partnership. When somebody purchases a piece of land, they're going to purchase it, but you can also set it up for success according to what the community is looking for. This is a way that, a lot of times in the traditional way of development, somebody will come and buy a piece of property and then they'll say, this is what I want to do. and they're calling your office, and saying, well, can I do this? In this best practice, you're basically setting up redevelopment-ready sites. It's almost like a profile of that property where that sits. And it says, you're allowed to do this on here, and these are the utilities. And by the way, there's Wi-Fi that goes, or high-speed internet that goes through over by that property. And maybe, that is what pushes, what attracts somebody to come and say, I like that. That's what I want to do. I want to put my business there. Or I think I could put some housing there for some of those folks in the village. It depends. So this is more of a proactive approach to how you vision and plan for those sites within your community. And the sixth best practice on page 18 is basically community prosperity. And really what that entails is many communities have an identity, and they want to preserve that identity. They never want to lose it. There are things that are particular to each community that's important to them. When you look at Michigan, you see a whole bunch of different festivals because there's an important, festival for one community over another, or an event, or somebody used to live there and they love to celebrate that person that made a difference for Michigan or the community or maybe even the country. So community prosperity really focuses in on that identity of the community and preserving it through economic development strategy, marketing strategy, and those sort of things where you can basically keep that prideful piece of why people live here and continue to live here and work and play here, and helps to strengthen the overall economic health because you know which direction you're going in and what you want to save and how you want to do your business. On slide 19 is a very long process about how this program works. Basically, for a community like the village of Holly, you need to get there's a resolution by the governing body that's approved for the intent to participate. Members of your staff need to go to best practice trainings, which has already happened, and then a self-evaluation is basically done, and those pieces are taken, given to a redevelopment ready communities planner, and they basically say, well, congratulations on being engaged in the program. And from that point on, they start to do a deeper dive on the master plan and the zoning ordinance and all those 6 best practices I just went over. And they make phone calls and they talk to local businesses and the local developers and property owners and residents, and they say, what's your experience like? And it's kind of a way of getting and surveying your community to see what's been going on and how can we see how it's been working over the course of time. And they start to compile all this information into a baseline assessment. And later on, they'll come out and they will give a report on what they found. And it's a percentage on those. So each best practice has sub-criteria, and I believe it's 41 sub-criteria that they look at. And so they'll come with a big matrix or a chart of squares for each one of those best practices, and it'll be either red, yellow, or green. And basically green means you're good. Yellow is you have whatever it is that the best practice is speaking to, but it needs a little tweaking. Maybe you have a great fee schedule for your review process, but maybe it's not online. Maybe it's not as accessible as maybe it should be. You make it into an electronic file, you put it on your website, boom, it's green. I mean, it can be that easy, or it can be a master plan update, which takes some time. These are all things that this process after that evaluation, like realistic timelines and who's responsible and all that stuff is identified so that you can go into the future working on these things to tweak or to fulfill to get towards certification. And there are benefits to each level of engagement and certification, which I'll get to later. So this is basically just talks at a very detailed level about what that process is. I just said that there were some benefits to this, and what's the value to this program. And earlier I mentioned, it's a third set of eyes, really looking at how you do your business, and making suggestions based on those best practices on what could be maybe some tweaks or what could be missing, but there's more. It's an ongoing partnership. We provide materials once communities are engaged in the program. We have a database of materials from master plans to guidebooks to economic development strategies from other communities that's shared with us that allow us to say, share this with other communities. We want other Michigan communities to be successful. You don't have to rewrite everything. There's ways of taking those materials and saying, could this be a fit for our community, and how would we change it so that it best matches what we want to do according to our plans. There's continued technical assistance that happens down the road. We're not just going to send you out there with a plan and say, good luck, we'll see you later. We're a phone call away, an email away. We're in it for the long haul, and we hope you are too. And it does help us to prioritize our funding. Those 250 communities across the state that are engaged or certified in our program have made an investment in their community to grow themselves the way that they should grow themselves, and we want to honor that investment by allowing them to be first priority when it comes to projects that we will use our funding and incentives for. And so for community development incentives, for those projects to be competitive, we look toward those RRC communities first. Those people that want to do business here, they see it as like a seal of good housekeeping. You've taken the time to really tweak and prioritize and streamline your community processes so that it's clear-cut and safe for them and for you. And so they see it that it's probably going to be easier for them and save them some time, and there won't be any surprises, which all are things that will either kill a deal or make it more expensive. So on slide 21, when you're RRC certified, when you've gone through the whole thing and all those best practice criteria are green, we come out and we make it a celebration. We highlight it. We push it out on social media. We make a big deal of it. You get a big old metal plaque. But you also get continued technical assistance. As an engaged community, your RRC planner and your staff will take a look at what's the biggest kind of heavy lift piece that the community is going to need to get through the certification process, right? Steps to certification. Well, there's up to $20,000 of technical assistance matching funds available to all communities. So, for instance, if an economic development strategy was something that the village and the RRC planner identified together, and let's say it was $30,000, I'm just making up numbers, we would be in for $15,000, and the village would be in for $15,000. So it's a clear cut. It's a really easy process just to kind of go through and do that. It's one of the easiest ways of getting money from our office you'll ever find. On the certified level, there's also pre-development assistance. And what that is basically is, let's say you had a portion of your community where you wanted to do something that was more of a soft cost, like a study. There's also up to $20,000 just straight money. There's no match needed for a soft cost assistance for, it's a one-time for that type of pre-development assistance for your community. And again, that's a conversation between the community and our team. But we also continue to promote the community. We have marketing assistance for those redevelopment-ready sites. In some cases, we've been able to churn through a couple so that we will refresh what that is for the communities that are in the fold. You know, and so, and we've actually had, you know, communities partner with us to talk to state legislators and be involved on a higher level, get involved with national programs to do studies with the Congress for New Urbanism and other national programs. So there's a lot of things that happen as communities continue to work with us in this partnership. On the next page, it talks about kind of the marketing kind of things that we do as a part of this as well. We used to do a published like paper copy of a thing called the Opportunity Michigan, and it basically was something we would take across the country to all events. We'd hand it to even like the business development people just to say, hey, drop these off, you know, when you're there, you know. And it was to highlight those particular redevelopment ready sites in the communities that we were working with, but we found that in some cases, in some communities, those sites were turning over quickly. And so by the time we would get ready to start passing them out, we'd have to go through the book and put, you know, no longer available or sold in there. And so it became a little hard to maintain. So most of our support in this way is online. But we use it, you know, locally throughout the state and nationally, so that it can open things up to a broader audience. We find that a lot of even the firms in Michigan, they do a lot of national work, and that's anywhere from the planning, engineering, and development firms. And so we know that we'd like those outside firms to spend money in your community, you know, so that we can drive things. Local economic forces to help support regional and state economic forces. And so that's why we are happy to provide these services through this program as a part of it. I know I've thrown a lot at you, and I would just like to remind you that at our website, myplace.org, we do have a lot of resources. In fact, we have a tab that says resources that talks about our programs and the incentives and things like that I was talking about, but it also shows the kind of work we've done across the state, project profiles and all kinds of things, so that you can become more familiar with us and what we do and what the possibilities could be for the village. So in the second to last page basically is my information. Feel free to use it to reach out if you have any additional questions. I'm not that far away. I work out of my home in Livonia. It's not around the corner, but it's definitely close enough, and it's closer than Lansing. So I don't mind coming out and talking. And then the last one's a thank you to you and your time. I appreciate it very much. And if anybody has any questions at this time, I'd be happy to help you out with that. If you did, go ahead.
I'm assuming this is federal money that you have.
It is not federal money. This is a state. The MEDC is a public corporation. It is funded by multiple sources. The federal monies are definitely focus in on certain things. So like the Small Business Administration does grants through our office, one of which is through the International Trade Group for State Trade Expansion Program, supporting companies doing trade activities. CDBG, so a lot of communities across the state get community development grant block dollars through housing and urban development to do certain projects, but usually it's direct funding or through an urban county program. So we do get a pot of money that we do for projects where those communities that don't get direct assistance or are not a part of a county program. And but that's specific to projects and that kind of stuff there. A lot of what we do is through state tax dollars. There's a Jobs Commission fund, or 21st Century Jobs Commission funding. There's corporate donations to the MEDC, and those sorts of things that kind of all get pulled together. We do a new budget every year through a pretty robust process, and so it's definitely more so through the corporate, I believe, for this program. And I'm not 100% sure on that, but it's definitely not federal. Some of the stuff that we do in communities does touch on federal activities because of the CDBG monies and that sort of thing. And so then we do run into those like planning activities or that sort of stuff that will intertwine with that, but it's not the main focus of this. So that was a very long answer, sorry.
How long does it take to be certified, and is there annual renewals or is it biannual? How long is that? And
so I'm going to hit a couple of things on that because you bring up a good point. So while you're engaged in the program, there's quarterly progress reports. And a lot of times what that is what were you planning to do and did you do it? In some cases, we have a community that started this program with one person. It's a small village west of here. And he was very concerned about that. And so it's, did you try, or what happened during that quarter that may not have gotten you to do your progress? What are you going to do to make up for it the next time? We are not going to hold your feet to the fire, but if it's every quarter is, well, we didn't get to it, we didn't get to it, we didn't get to it, there's a certain amount of, well, maybe it's not a good faith relationship type of thing, and we have to reevaluate that. Certification is different for every community. Some communities, I think the shortest amount of time was either 8 or 9 months from the time they got their baseline report till they were certified. Other communities have gone 3, almost 4 years because of maybe 1 or 2 bigger sticking points, or just the timelines of getting some of the bigger pieces. It really is a case-by-case scenario, and we will try to help you to identify what timelines are for certain things, but those aren't set in stone. It's always a conversation, and I can't stress that more, than it's the most important thing, communication. Just, if something's not going right, pick up the phone and just say, hey, look, we're kind of stuck here, or we're not really sure what we're doing here, or can you give us something or an example? And that's part of that technical assistance that we give. So it does vary. So and then there is recertification every 3 years after. And basically what it is the planner, the RSC planner, goes back to the community. They do kind of like an interview type of thing and some information gathering. It's not as heavy duty or intensive as getting certified. To kind of look at, what were your goals? What were you really trying to do with this? And has anything changed that we need to just kind of update our files on and that sort of thing? And there's only been a couple of recertifications. I know Roseville did theirs, but it's definitely not as harsh. Reporting is biannually once you're certified. And again, what things have changed, what kind of projects have you worked on, is it related to any of those redevelopment ready sites that you have set up for your community, and those sorts of things. It's more of a touching base so that we know, and if anything happens that we hear about, gives us an opportunity to learn about where can we make some connections and maybe some opportunities for growth for both of us.
So I believe, looking at the certification process, the step 1, step 2, and step 3, we're at step 1, engagement, and I believe that we've already adopted the resolution through council, and now we've submitted the RRC self-evaluation, and then the next one on the list would be community information review. So I believe that once we submit our self-evaluation, we pass a resolution. Now the ball's back in your court, and we wait for some sort of feedback from you to take our next step forward, which would be community placed in the RRC pipeline.
Yeah. So what my task is that I'm going to be taking, do a touch point with my RRC team to see where in the process that review is, make sure that we have everything that we need, and get back to you tomorrow with that information, so that we can make sure that you're in the best position right now. The map that I provided you shows that there are 83 communities waiting for their full evaluation to be done. So there is a pretty lengthy timeline between when you're officially engaged and when you actually get the evaluation.
And what is that timeline? Just out of, does that
well,
take your office
depends.
a year for 83, or does it take 6 months? Does it take 2 years? Just so we're aware.
If my hunch is correct, latest it's been 6 to 8 months, because it's a deep dive. And a lot of times, what ends up happening is
that 6 to 8 months per community, or?
Yes.
So I mean, we're talking several years before we could possibly even get addressed.
No. It's not per community. It's the timeline between when you become officially engaged and when you'll get that baseline evaluation.
I get you.
And something else that some communities have worked on is that since you already did your self-evaluation, some of those items you already know you didn't meet those things.
Right, yeah,
So
like
you can
master
already-
plan, which we're starting
so
tonight.
you can already start internally.
Mhm.
Something that RRC pushes you to do is have an internal checklist. Who's responsible for finishing this RRC objective, have a timeline. So that can already be done internally, and you can already start to figure out what pieces need to go together or timing on your internally. So the ball's in their court, but at the same time, it's
We need to be
not a
proactive.
sit and wait game.
Sure.
You can still be doing things. So like starting the master plan. There's certain elements that Ro's gone through the training, I've gone through the training. So I can help with some of those different technical points, or at least start laying the groundwork for those.
And I know computer access you touched on, and that's a big thing for our office. I know
Sure.
We need to be a lot better than we are with that.
So, for example, when I went out with the planner to do the baseline assessment report out to the city of Milan, their manager took the self-evaluation and said, what are some low-hanging fruit items? And so did the planner. Upon the official notification of engagement, they will give you a certain number of low-hanging fruit items, like, is your fee schedule online, that kind of stuff. And he just took it and he just started whacking them off.
Yeah.
He did this, he did that, and he just took care of a bunch of them, so that when we came back, he said, well, I've got about 6 of these sub-criteria already taken care of. So their percentage went from like 55 to like 70 and like that. I mean, so what you can handle, or what those best practices in that self-evaluation, and what the website has for resources and the people you work with can help you out. Do what you think you need to do in the meantime.
We don't
that
want
will
to
set you up for success later on down the road. Yeah.
You can always work and keep them updated with even before you get your full evaluation. Hey, we just finished an annual
Yep.
report that's published, that's online. Just
See,
wanted to know.
and that's awesome advice. That is part of the reason sometimes that adds to the timeline between when you get that, because they're trying to take like a snapshot in time so that you can kind of see like where we're at the time we submitted. So that baseline assessment sometimes becomes very dynamic because some communities take that suggestion and run with it. So it's a back and forth of, okay, well, we've adjusted the report now. What do you think? Oh, by the way, this last week we did 3 more things. You know, it's like, so it can be a little back and forth, a lot of feedback going on. But really, you can do a lot. You know, there's a lot of things. If you recognize what those things are, and you know how to handle, you know, fulfilling that toward that best practice criteria, then you're better off doing it. So
hopefully, if I get this right, then I'll be the bearer of some good news. So technical assistance is one of the things that is provided by being engaged in the redevelopment ready community process. So technical assistance equals money. So one of the things that they'll allow technical assistance monies toward is master plan overhaul. And that's something that Caitlin's here to talk to us about tonight. So as long as everything flushes out in the process of, ta-da, you are now engaged in the process to become a RRC community, then there's up to a $20,000 match that they can provide to us to a certified company that will do master plan. Caitlin's company, Rowe Professional Services, is one of their preferred providers. Therefore, if this all goes well, $20,000 from MEDC, ta-da, to match to have a fabulous new master plan. So
That was that one-time soft cost?
No, that's after certification. This is for steps to getting to certification.
Right,
so
so
that
the
is something
technical
that.
assistance matching.
So there's 2 opportunities for funding.
So the quicker we get all this stuff and they say we're engaged, the quicker that 20 grand match goes to our master plan.
Yeah.
That's good news.
Yeah. Yes.
So when she charges 6, we get the balance?
Party on, Gar. I have a question.
Sure.
Besides improving our master plan, bringing it up to date, what other responsibilities does the Planning Commission have in this process?
Well, that's kind of what you gotta work out locally. You probably have, like, let's say you recognize that maybe there's an aspect of your zoning that's not, you know, as clear or maybe not hitting on the mark that your community really wants or needs. I mean, those are decisions I'm sure you've probably gone through on other occasions. Am I wrong? Or
I think a PUD would be, the PUD text amendment would be a good one.
So text amendments to the master plan. I know we've talked about administrative processes a little bit as far as what this planning commission body sees in just a site plan review versus sign application. And there are other documents that refer to, like the public engagement strategies.
Yep.
It depends who wants to be the holder of that plan. Correct me if I'm wrong, some communities use their planning commission, others have staff members that are in charge of maintaining that document. And then there's also the community development guidebook. I'm slaughtering the name, but it's essentially the idea that giving that pathway of when I start at the door and I want to do a site plan, where do I go to next? So sometimes it's staff created, but the planning commission sometimes has a role in that, sometimes doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, the development process or review process, your guide, yes. Yeah, so I'm sure you have zoning officials, so I didn't mean those are the types of planning, review process, those sort of things where you may or may not decide who does what or wants to know how you update those sort of things. Some of it's internal staff. It depends on what those processes hit and who's usually responsible for them.
So something, if you're interested in, I know training opportunities are always a nice thing. The more that you can understand, the more that you can learn, the better you'll be as a planning commissioner. So I've attended 2 courses, the best practices. It's on 2 different days, and it's at the Michigan Municipal League in Lansing. They're free trainings, and when I went to both of the classes, it's best practices 1, 2, and 3, and then 4, 5, and 6. There were several people that were in my class that were either on their zoning board of appeals, or they were planning commissioners, or they were on the village council or something, because of this being a free course to attend. And there's so much fantastic information. I took a lot of notes when I go to trainings. Between the 2 days, I took 43 pages of notes. I'm not kidding. And I scanned all those notes in, and I'll be glad to share them if you want. But you're also welcome, too, if you would like to attend those trainings. Like I said, they're free. The next one I just checked it's on Valentine's Day, but it's on February 14th from 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Michigan Municipal League on Capitol Avenue in Lansing. So that's the RRC Best Practices 1, 2, and 3. And you're most welcome if that's something that you'd be interested in signing up. It's kind of nice after you attend both of the courses that you get a little certificate on with your name on it that says you completed the course. But it's excellent information, especially in the role that you play here. That learning and being in the class and listening to other communities and what works for them, and kind of like tightening up all of our transparency of things that are on the website, and we use the term R&D, which most people will say is like research and development. But at least in my role, R&D means rip off and duplicate. So if it works for another community, maybe it'll work for ours too, and we can R&D their certain stuff. So just a thought: if you're interested in attending that training, it would be really beneficial in your role. Obviously not required; it's an optional thing, but it is free to attend. So
also,
throw that out there.
There is an online component that's been offered just recently for those trainings. However, they're not as intense, and you don't get the opportunity to be in the room with other people who are going to be doing the same thing. And sometimes that other person from another community has a really good idea, and it helps you to understand why these best practices are what they are, and how they really apply to your community, and how it can work for you. And so that interaction and that networking really does help. And we've seen the relationships and how communities have supported each other, not only in this work, but work beyond the RRC program. So I would say there are definitely benefits to both, but that kind of one-on-one interaction really does help and is more intensive, and kind of hits on things a little bit more. So, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Dominic, thank you so much for coming tonight and presenting to us and sharing all this information. We are excited to become engaged in the RRC process. We're ready.
All right.
Thank you. Okie dokie. I believe you're up, the master plan.
All right, so good evening. So just to catch everyone up to speed, we had talked about the master plan, I believe it was at October's meeting as well. Since then, I have had the opportunity to meet with the village manager, Jerry Walker, to revise the proposal slightly to kind of clarify what items we would be considering doing. So briefly going through the proposal, one of the first things we plan on doing is a kickoff meeting, talking about a basic training, so everyone's on the same page as far as where we're going to go, talk about duties, roles, and responsibilities throughout this process, kind of get our plan together. Then what we plan on doing is updating a variety of chapters. A lot of the base of the master plan, specifically in the data analysis section, is really a good base, and those characteristics aren't changing. Where wetlands are or where wetlands are going to stay. So what we're really going to try to focus on is different areas that need updates based on the direction of staff or the Planning Commission. So updating the introduction section, to make sure it narrates the new vision of the master plan. Update the community profile, so using 2017 census data from the Census Bureau. Utilizing the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments, their population forecasting, the idea of seeing how our population may be changing and how we want to consider different policy directions on what they are forecasting. For the existing land use inventory, utilizing Oakland County's analysis. So currently they do a yearly analysis of the existing land use area in the entire county, and then they divide it out through each village or each jurisdiction. So utilizing that as a base and then showing that map, if there's a few that we would like to classify differently, we can do so, and change that information and compare it to the 2003 data that also is a land use inventory by Oakland County, to give us a metric on, are we having a lot of turnover for new commercial or industrial or residential, see where we've changed in that demand, in that snapshot of time. Currently we don't propose to make any changes to surface water or wetland information that's been provided. However, something that the village has been engaged in is the wellhead protection program. So making sure we add an excerpt about that. That was something talked about a few years ago of amending into the master plan. So just taking that conceptual plan that was worked on by staff and including that into the master plan. One of our optional items is the transportation data. Currently, we could propose to add in new information talking about different road classifications, talking about high-frequency accident intersections if there's an issue of trying to plan around that, if that data would be helpful. So that's an optional item if we want to do that component. Otherwise, we'll just be looking at the work commuting census data track information that's in there and updating that to match the 2007 data that's now available. Currently, we would like to also add a summary of the Parks and Recreation Plan, specifically pointing out different components of the implementation plan. So making sure the master plan is, as the name implies, the master document. But we want to make sure that we're nodding to different other important documents that are also trying to complete and implement a vision. So we talk about the Parks and Rec plan, talk about the Downtown Development Authority's plan, making sure those strategies that are involved in those plans are mentioned in the master plan and then put on a larger radar of making sure these items are getting done and worked on. Something else was to look at the master plan's implementation plan, look at the community service map, updating, especially since we have new locations for our fire hall, as well as the village hall has changed since the map was originally adopted. Making sure that we update the summary of the historical districts located in the village, making sure that we compare it to what's going on right now in the Historical District Commission, so just making sure everyone's on the same page. The new information with their new plan is the most up to date. Then something to update is data of the built-out condition, including a built-out map and identifying those different redevelopment potential projects. So as the RSC program mentioned, having those priority sites of sites we want to consider redeveloping or needing additional modifications, or how can we help move this property over. But specifically, since the Village of Holly, we don't have a ton of vacant property, making sure that we realize where those assets are, where are those greenfield development not touched by a building or contaminated, and how are we going to utilize those. And then the last part of the general update information is to look at the surrounding communities, specifically Holly Township and then Rose Township. So currently in your plan you compare to those two communities, seeing what they're doing. It's good to update that to make sure that if we plan our giant residential district on a corner or at the edge of the township and they plan a giant industrial park, those aren't necessarily complementary. So making sure that we're keeping up to date, because when someone leaves our community and goes into another, they don't necessarily know this is the end of Holly. So making sure that people move beyond boundaries. So making sure we're trying to keep that in mind when we're making our plan. Next is to do public engagement. We have several different variety of options, and I'll go over that in a little bit. We eliminated quite a few that we had mentioned at the previous meeting. Based on that feedback and then talking with the manager, we were able to make that list a little bit smaller so it's not as intense. But you're allowed to select which public engagement you think will be the most beneficial for your community. Then the last stretch of the different meetings is the goals and objectives. So we propose doing joint meetings between the Planning Commission and City Commission, or City Village Council. Thank you. And essentially trying to come up with what are our goals, what are our overlying visions of our community, what are our objectives, what are things that we want to see in our community, and then strategies. How are we going to actually implement where we want to go? And then as part of RRC, what they do is they do this table of all the strategies, and you try to identify who's the responsible parties or the individuals. What's their timeline? What is our priority? Is this a high priority we should really think about doing quickly, or is this more of a low priority? So coming up with a giant table, what we like to do at Row is have a little bit of a 5-year hit list of 5 different things to help focus in. But of course, always having that backup list and that's something we encourage every year as you're looking at just checking. All right, we said in our timeline this is a high priority. We wanted to get it done. Did it get done? No? Okay. Is there a plan for that, or did we reevaluate our goals? And then lastly, it's to look at our future land use analysis and then the implementation plan. So specifically looking at our future land use, there's a few different things, like we don't have a PUD district in our future land use map. We recommend having a 1-to-1 ratio. That way it's very clear when you're looking at a rezoning situation, what district should be going to what. That way it's not a guessing game for specifically this body. So we'll be evaluating that if we want to change certain areas as well. So and then notice requirements, holding a public hearing, the document, the master plan, once it's recommended by this body, does go to the village council and then ultimately gets adopted. So that's the general process in a nutshell. So the different public engagement opportunities to select from that we had narrowed down is public attitude survey. So an idea utilizing SurveyMonkey, which is an online, you go through a different 20-question survey or whatever length we deem fit. But we also provide some paper copies for communities as well, because there are different individuals that are more comfortable with a paper copy. So try to have a few copies either at the front desk, and we can compute those and include those into that survey. The youth charrette is more or less a 1-day session where we try to coordinate with the schools. We've worked in the past with elementary students, middle school, and high school. Depending on what kind of feedback we want, we might want to target to yes.
Quick question: are we just picking one, or are we picking?
You can pick as many as you want.
That was given by administrative to do that.
Yes.
It was okay.
Mm-hmm. And then, and technically, the village council always has the prerogative. If they do not want to include one of these options, they can amend the contract at their level as well. But the youth charrette is the idea of getting feedback from the youth in our community. At least at the one that I was running, it was very interesting to see how concerned, or a different perspective of, they were worried about walkability. I really like going to this ice cream store, and I can't get there from my house because I have this giant length, there's no sidewalk. So my mom won't let me go to the ice cream store. Or a lot of the high schoolers were concerned there's not a lot of healthy food options. So it's great that there's a Taco Bell right across from the high school, but I'm not going to really want to eat there. I'd really like to see healthier options, or I don't feel like there's anything to do. It'd be great if there was a gym or a pool or whatever these different assets are that some people were very surprised to hear about. The next one is the community visioning meeting. So that's a afternoon. It's usually a 2-hour meeting. We invite variety of members of the public at large. We then go into work groups and we do a SWOT analysis. So we look at strengths, we look at weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And we have all these different maps of the village, and we have residents talk amongst each other. What do we like about our village? What do we want to work on? And kind of tease that out and then report out. And then the last part of this session is to talk about goals and objectives. Where's our community at, and where do we want to see it going? Or do we like different attributes? So we want to continue to be a small town feel in our area. So try to tease out that semi-detailed information from the public. And then the master plan open house happens closer to the end of the process, after we've talked about goals and objectives. It's the idea that now we're trying to showcase that to the public. We come up with display boards on a few different topics, partly to be a two-way street of communication, educational, so the public, when we say a complete street, what does that mean in the Village of Holly and for which corridors? Because in a technical sense, a complete street doesn't have to always be multi-transit, mass transit, sidewalks, bike lanes. It doesn't have to include all of those methods of maneuverability. It changes on the type of road you're really looking at surfacing. So trying to have that conversation, and what they do is they have a survey that they go through, and they help prioritize, are we on track with what we think are a high priority to have happen in our community? So it's a verification and an education two-way street to energize or take ownership of this process. And then lastly, it's the one option we do, and we don't specifically have a price because it's very specific on how engaged you want Row to be in the social media aspect, but utilizing an existing page, creating a new page to keep the public aware of what's going on the master plan. Usually it works best when you're hand in hand with different things. So the SurveyMonkey and using social media, that's been helpful because you can tease questions. Do you want more sidewalks? What do you think about putting this? Do you like this signage? Or whatever question you can push to encourage people to take your survey and to put their opinion in the survey. And then just depends on how often you want that communication to take place as well. So we do provide in attachment C is advantages, disadvantages to all those different strategies. You don't necessarily have to make a decision tonight if you'd like to still ponder it. However, I believe it was the thinking that we probably would come to some consensus and then figure out a recommendation to the village council to move forward and starting to work on the master plan. So is there any other questions for me?
On the SurveyMonkey.
Yes.
All right. How do you, I guess, communicate that out for people to access, to know it's there? How do you even begin that process?
So we've done a few different strategies, and it's primarily working hand in hand with staff. Part of it is either putting a small printout in all the water bills and letting people know, hey, go to SurveyMonkey, this is the URL, or go to the Village of Holly's website, and we'll have the survey link there. So usually if they have a website, we put it on the website. If they have a social media presence at all, we utilize social media to push that out. But then sometimes even not necessarily mailing out the whole survey, but just have a little notice or in the envelopes for bills or anything to encourage people to participate.
$10 off your water bill to take the survey?
Usually community surveys or SurveyMonkeys do work better when you hold prizes. So I know different communities have done $50 gift cards to one of the bakeries in their downtown or something like that. So generally people hop at the opportunity to win free money. So that's something that usually staff takes on as part of that. We have samples of different, I guess, flyers that we used, or we'll help create those little reminders to put into those water bills. But as far as figuring out if we're going to do a prize component or working with them to make sure we try all these different methods. Yes, sir.
I have one more question. This is going back a little bit.
Sure.
You made a comment that green properties with the RRC, do they only look at green parcels, or do they look at brownfields as well?
Correct. That's my understanding. Is it's not just greenfield development, but gray field development or brownfields.
So we have a couple of those that are green, publicly owned.
Right.
That could be on that
want list. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions? Okay. Thank you for your time.
Sure.
Now,
Mr. Orkomsky, would you guys like to engage in conversation on the public engagement ideas that Caitlin submitted to us with possible suggestions moving forward, or are you looking to do that now?
No, sorry, I was just shaking my hair.
Or would you like to do that in another month? Because
Well,
each one of these processes takes a month for us because we meet, once a month. So If we could somehow get some discussion going on these, and then if you did make a decision, then staff could, in the month that we're not meeting, put that on the water bill, put it on the newsletter that's electronically sent out, or even put it on the village social media. These are actions that are required on your end for decision making, so that staff can continue to move forward with the master plan project.
And something that, if you wanted to, is you could just say what your priorities are too. You could rank this as a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and say if the village council, if they really want to pick which ones they're not going to pick all of them, or if they're only going to pick a few, you really will think this would be most beneficial to your community. So you could number them and recommend that with your decision.
I have a question. How much
Yes.
money do we have available to do the master plan? Redo it.
I believe it was 20 to 25.
And then there's also that lovely match of up to $20,000 if you done it.
Then why aren't we going to do all these things if they're?
They all seem feasible.
Yeah, they seem necessary as far as I'm concerned.
Right,
We're
and
gonna
we
look at the very first. It costs $14,700 just to do the master plan update, and then option 1 would be
top
$950
line.
for the additional line, and then each number below that. So
Comes to what?
I don't know what the total is for all three. Social media doesn't even have a
Glancing at
number.
it, looks like about, what, 28,000?
Yeah, I would say it's over the 20,000
25 to
marker.
30, yeah.
I guess from a personal standpoint, okay, we've been kicking this can down the road for so many years, primarily because we've never had any approvals of budget money to actually go forward. The transportation item, in my personal opinion, I don't see the real benefit of that for our little small town with our limited go through roads, basically. I feel the public attitude survey is very important. That I would almost mark as number 1. The youth charrette, I think, would be very interesting. I don't know how much the adults would look at that as actionable from their response.
Well, when we're doing that youth charrette, it is a guided journey in so many words, and usually what even when we were working with the elementary school kids, what happened in the city of Burton is they had 3 school districts in their community, so we tried to do one, they called it a youth summit, so we had probably about 25 children that came, and so we tried to split them up into different groups. Usually staff from the school was helping the kindergartner groups or the elementary school groups a little bit more to kind of tease out those different ideas. But then from a technical standpoint, someone pointing out that they can't get to their ice cream store, that's a sidewalk connectivity issue. So a lot of their basic concerns when it came to what their community looks like, it just took a little bit of fishing to get out what they really wanted to do. So some of that, specifically when you're talking about the older students who were worried about the health of the different food options, they didn't feel like there was a lot of options. So is that something that the community could start targeting for? Or are there reasons those establishments aren't in this area? Have food trucks tried to come in but we don't allow food trucks? Or is it that rent's too high, so we need to, or for those trial groups to really come to this area? So maybe allowing for incubator space for food kitchens is something that we'd want to consider. So the youth, sometimes their ideas, you just have to build them up, and that just takes a bit of finessing in some ways. And we try to do that with our different reports. And specifically, if we wanted to target the older students, they have an understanding of, I guess, those different type topics as we move forward.
Okay. To me, the community visioning is very important.
I think we would get good participation too, even though it says here it's usually relatively low.
And that's where that's why we really try to push these are options, because you know your community the best. And for certain communities, they get high participation of the same 20 people. So if they have if they were to do focus group sessions and then had the visioning meeting, they'd have the same 20 people they just talked to at that meeting. We're not talking about doing that. And something that we're not doing focus group sessions. That was something that was eliminated. So utilizing visioning meetings, and the village is more than happy if they know some different outspoken individuals to bring to those meetings. We encourage the Planning Commission to come to these public engagement meetings, the village council to come to these meetings, just to provide some insight on what they even see from a day-to-day standpoint working in the system.
Couldn't we get basically same information from the survey if we used
It's
it right?
not as detailed, though, because when someone at the visioning meeting's reporting out and they say they don't like the roadways in Holly, and they put that as a comment in the community survey, or if we say how good is walkability, it's a 5 or it's a 3. I can't follow up question and say, well, is it the road quality? Is it you can't walk on the road, or there's no sidewalk, or there's no bike lane? You can have that dialogue during a visioning meeting. You can't have that dialogue with the community survey, since you don't know who answered it, and then you can't. And there's different sliding scale methods, but you can't talk to them asking about their rationale behind it. So it's usually the community survey, you get the wider brush approach, you get a general consensus of what's going on in the community, usually talk to more people. Visioning sessions get a pretty decent size of people, but you get a more detailed interaction.
If we get enough people to that meeting.
Right. So something that we, specifically for like the open house, something we try to do is we try to piggyback off of other events. And this is something we try to coordinate during the kickoff, when we're trying to really figure out the schedule for when these public engagements should take place. We've done open houses at chili cook-offs. Community members are already there. Open houses are great because we're there all day. We usually have 2 windows, one in the afternoon and one at night, to try to get 2 different demographics. You can stay 5 minutes. You can only look at the 2 boards you were concerned about and walk out, or you can stay there the whole 4-hour period and look over every single board and talk to everybody. So visioning meetings, if it happens after some other meeting, or we can coordinate with different inviting people to come to that type meeting to provide input, generally that's done pretty elegantly, and then you can get the type of turnout that you're looking for.
With you making the comment about the public attitude survey, and like you said, getting basically half information, as far as the survey questionnaire versus specifics, that makes it then kind of, like I say, very difficult to understand what they meant by it.
And it's part of its word crafting too. If the questions are generally, I like to do sliding scales a little bit more, because the world is not absolutes. And we don't just come up with a community survey we've used in every community. We do run these questions we're asking by the Planning Commission. This isn't a superiority. We're just going to random ask questions. We're going to try to tease out what do we want to know from the community. Is a goal of ours or a focus of ours to talk about walkability? So where are we at with the public perception of walkability? Or do people like our sign requirements? Or do they like the look of a street corridor? So you can tease out certain questions to get semi-detailed information, but you can't have that two-way dialogue.
What kind of things do you include in the social media?
It depends.
That a little bit better.
It depends on what each community wants, and my understanding is the Village of Holly has a really active social media presence.
Why I'm asking.
And if essentially what you would like to do is just have staff take that on and they do the updates, I'm more than happy if they would like to post a picture of different content that I showed at a meeting. I'm more than happy to pass it along to them, as opposed to us writing or getting access to the Facebook page and actually generating that information. So For the city of Zmilwaukee and then the city of Burton, what we did is I would take screenshots of certain information that the Planning Commission was surprised about. So was the housing years, I mean, there was 5 houses that were really, really old. Did anyone know that? So taking a demographic and showing that we're working on the master plan, this is something we discovered. Keep checking in with the process or whatnot. But as you go closer to the public engagement, having the public engagement event as a Facebook event and having people follow or like that, and then pushing that type of thing, or updating individuals. We're about to get to the public hearing. If you want to know what's going on in the plan, come to the meeting. So I guess it's a really vague way to answer your question
Sure.
again.
No, that helped.
But
because are we able to come back to that if it looks like I know that Katie and a couple other office people really put a lot of time into what we are currently doing with social media, and if you pick this up and add it to what you're already doing, can we come back later and go, you know what, I think we've just overwhelmed our staff. Can we look at adding that? Is
I see
that
where you're
kind of
going
thing
at.
possible?
I guess that's a staff question then, if they feel like
Kinda
they
to
have
amend the
capacity.
Contract later.
I see what you're saying. So yes, it would be outside of scope, but we can work within that frame if we need to
Okay.
do an adjustment to it to mediate that. Especially since I like to make sure both sides know what to expect with social media, how often, and if it's starting up a new page or using an existing. I always recommend using an existing because master plans are projects. It's a full 20-year commitment. But as far as high activity in the master plan update, that's really a shortened period. It'll take us a little bit less than a year to get through this whole entire process. But still, you don't want to make a page and then never look at it again.
Right.
So that is something that we could evaluate as we go through. I think the biggest utilization of social media was just to try to get public media, is to get public input. Make sure that they know we're looking for their opinion and we would like their opinion.
Sure.
And I think just briefly talking with Katie here now, that's something that we're going to move forward with regardless. We're going to be constantly, she's always updating that. So as we move forward with the master plan update, I'm sure Katie's going to put little teasers on Facebook as well. So I think the social media is pretty much covered on that side because we're just she's so active with it already. I think that, that's already a slam dunk.
Sure.
But I definitely think you definitely should consider more thought into the youth charrette. I have young boys, and some of the ideas that they bounce off me on a daily basis, I shake my head as a proud dad, and then I shake my head as, where did you come up with this idea or thought process? So I think if you target maybe a couple age groups, and like Kaylin said, 20 to 25 students selected by the school district to just take part in that, I think you'd be really surprised of the input that you might get.
I also think
agree.
that they want to be heard. They want to say what they think, and I never got involved in any of this stuff. I've repeated this several times. Had I had more involvement as a young person as in school, more likely I would have gotten more involved at a younger age. So it's keeping them involved and engaged and important, and just kind of paving the pathway to maybe you want to be on the planning commission someday or council, or just get involved and come to every single meeting. So I think it's important for our youth to be involved too.
When I went through the training, the best practices for RRC, one of the presenters made a comment about including youth in getting their opinions in the decision making and planning out the process. And he made mention specifically that the best age group is ages 8 and 9 years old. He said your 3rd and your 4th graders, if you want, because there's they hold nothing back.
No filters.
There's no filters whatsoever. But so they have a mind of their own and they're forming opinions, but they're not jaded yet by others or social media or things like that. They just kind of say it like it is. And so they'll talk about, the sidewalks to the ice cream shop and stuff because that's important to them. But they'll start pulling out things that other adults or the teenagers don't think about because they've been influenced by the news and media and stuff. Your 8, 9-year-olds will just put it out there. Those are the ones that honestly you want to get those opinions because of the future of the community, of the way that they see it in their eyes. Those are also the ones then that are going to want to stay here. That's our next generation.
And if we start them now, taking part in community development and things like that, they will continue to do that. We've got to have it makes a big difference.
Definitely make it easier for them to go into it. It's not something brand new to them. They'll be already, they'll have their feet wet a little bit, I guess.
How about if we do this, because we could sit here and debate all night long. Each one of you on the scope of services and cost sheet. All right.
I don't have mine.
You can share with me.
Okay.
Well, this is not a sharing moment.
Oh, dear.
You know you could, yeah.
We have extras here.
If you go through those and rank those in priority of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, individually, and you don't have to put your name on it or anything like that, it doesn't matter. And then we compile the majority of who says what, and then that's what we're looking at.
I think that's a great approach.
Matter of fact, that I don't want to give this.
So what?
Oh, do you want me to
No,
stay out
I
of the
thought
room?
I thought you needed.
That's where you're gonna be back.
I want to keep that page in my packet.
I think at this point too, it's important when you're ranking them. Don't worry too much about what you see with dollars and cents. Think about more of what impact it'll make.
Yeah, because I ripped it out of there.
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to do the tallying, or
If you so desire, that'd be great.
because I can walk around with my notepad and go 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever.
There you go. Then you don't have to take my page.
I overheard you. Aim to please.
And since they talked about social media up there with the office staff, I'm assuming then we're not putting a number on that.
Okay.
Would be the last priority.
Yes.
Yeah, I would just say a no. No, I would just put a no.
Right.
1, 4, 2, 3.
So you're going top down?
Yes.
All right. Where are you starting here? Okay. 2, 3, 4, 1, out, 6, whatever.
Got it.
He's got all ours.
Oh, you already moved them. Well, thank you.
Yeah, that's okay.
You're still here.
I'm still here.
See, I never was on any of those things. It took me till it's almost 50 to get involved in something like this.
Well, my dad was chairman of the planning commission. You know, things like that. So I got that experience too.
Okay. So I added up everyone's score, so the lowest score should be the winner. So that was the public attitude survey, was number 1. Number 2 was the community visiting meeting. Number 3, by 1 point, was master plan open house, and then the youth charrette.
So staff will take that back to our supervisors, and we'll give you an update next month on the progress and moving forward with those as you guys rank them.
Sounds good.
So do we take this to council?
I don't think we take it to council yet, or do we? I think we take it to administration, and then.
I mean, it's up to you. We don't actually need a motion to recommend anything. The village council are the ones with the purses, so they really get to pick what the ultimate decision is.
So we'll put this in order that you guys did, talk to staff, and then put it on the next council meeting for their feedback.
And I think one thing that is one of those, toss the dice type thing is if we move forward something like this, because it, in theory, right now at those numbers, it is over what the budgeted dollars are, okay? If this would be our choice, and then we're working forward, maybe we could get a commitment moving forward with any dollars that would be associated.
Yep, and then add them as we move on.
And then that would be something that would then allow us to move forward with the entire scope and still stay within budget.
So just make sure that while we're going through the process, keep Dominic involved as far as the money component, because there is some processes on both sides of how it works.
How
we
it
don't
flow.
you don't just pay row and then we get reimbursed through it's a process. So
Yeah, and we'll know a lot more from Dominic tomorrow.
It's a conversation between the RSC team,
Your staff, and voting and everything, sure.
how that all will
transpire.
In the end, it's a wonderful partnership between being engaged in the RRC, working with Roe, and the master plan, and the timing couldn't be better.
Yeah.
And in the end result, we have a new updated master plan, which in the end is what we're really shooting for, regardless.
Under budget.
Yep.
And the more input we can get from the community, the better off we are as a community.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Thank you, Caleb.
You're welcome.
Very good.
Moving on. Number 3, the annual Planning Commission review for 2018. I'm assuming everybody saw that as part of the packet of the amendment when it came through your house. I didn't see anything in there that did not look accurate to me. I want to give thanks to Jeremy for the time and effort put into it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And other than that, did you have any comments you wanted to make on it other than the presentation of the document?
I don't. As long as everybody's happy, I'm happy. We'll also be presenting that same template to the Zoning Board of Appeals next month.
Okay. Yeah, to me it looked like it was very well done and concise. I appreciate it.
It's also going to go to council as well.
Okay.
Thank you. Do we need one?
Procedurally, usually I see a motion on recommending the report to the village council, and then the village council will just accept the report.
Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion to that fact?
I'll make that motion.
Yeah, can you verbally state it, please?
I make the motion that we recommend this report, the 2018 Planning Commission Annual Report, to the Village Council.
I'll give it support.
I support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hearing none, move forward to presenting it to the Village Council as a accepted document from the Planning Commission. Okay. Reports. ZBA.
As far as I know, we haven't had any more meetings since we met last.
We have one coming up.
Yes, but we haven't had any since then.
DDA.
Rick Powers came in. He's doing a fundraiser at the bowling alley. It's Pins for Parks. I believe the DDA contributed towards that. Andrew Anderson, somebody that you need to look up. He they want to make an Andrew Anderson Day. He's a youth he's a young man, I should say. He's in his 20s. He became the #1 bowler.
Pro Bowler of the Year, U.S. Pro Bowler of the Year. He's from Holland.
Yeah, he's one of us. So that's somebody you might want to look into that fundraiser. The DDA had 3 resignations and 2 spots were filled. And we talked about the tech visit for 2019 that Oakland County pays for. I believe it's going to go to the fundraising efforts to move and restore the depot. We're starting our big campaign. We have 25 out of 40 donation boxes out. We've got a lot of things going on, and Holly Main Street is going to be focusing on fundraising for moving the depot and restoring it, as well as a 100 volunteer challenge, trying to increase our numbers so that we can really roll out the red carpet for all of our activities. I suppose Katie could comment some more, but there are a lot of happenings with moving the depot, meetings with the different rails, talking about getting the land, talking about making it happen. And it's really exciting, and I hope everybody will get involved in some of the activities that we have coming up.
Okay, thank you. Anything from the council?
One thing to just remember that the council has gone to only 1 meeting per month as well, so if you have anything to present, we need to, there wouldn't be another one following this meeting. It's only the second Tuesday of every month at this point. And at the last council meeting, we did have a resolution to make that day the 22nd Andrew Anderson Day. So that was done at the last council meeting.
Do they have anything in the statutes where staff and or other committees could request a emergency meeting?
Yes, I believe it takes either village president or 2 council members, I think, to request an emergency or a special meeting.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you. Anything else?
I think that's it for council.
All right. And I don't believe we still don't have anybody on parks. But from what I know, they really haven't met either, have they? Have they?
Mm-hmm.
Parks has met. Yeah, the village parks, and they talked about Pins for Parks, so their big fundraiser. There was a big discussion about it's the rolling fundraiser on February 22nd. So that was the majority of the meeting.
Okay.
I'd also like to add, we got a group of young kids. Angie Lemon, 116 College Street. We had a group of, there was some youth there to raise money for backpack, the Blessings in a Backpack. So they approached us. They wanted to do a concert. We're pretty full with concerts also, according to Chris. I haven't seen a listing of what he's got, but he definitely thinks that would be a good idea. But we could possibly do it at Crapo Park, but they're also talking about maybe doing it at the school somewhere. So we suggested that they do talk to
I
the
think
schools.
those guys were talking about a Battle of the Bands event.
We're worried if they had it in Cyclone Park, or not Cyclone, Crapo Park, how we would keep track of the fund, keep people there and be able to collect funds with them, for them, however they want to do it. That's why we suggested that they maybe go to. We didn't decline, we think it's a great idea, but suggested that. And then the Pins for Parks, I don't know if she said the date, that's February 22nd. But I don't remember the time, but it is February 22nd.
Yep, $25 per person.
$10 for just the meal.
$4 4-person teams with a celebrity.
Right.
5th person.
Okay.
Then it was brought up maybe of putting a senior garden in over at Cyclone Park. It was just discussed. I don't know, because there's the possibility that in the future we might be the old ambulance place that might be converted into like a senior center type of thing. But I don't know if that'll actually ever happen, but that there is talk about doing that. They've had some people come and look with Brian Clausen to look inside, and if nothing else, at least modernize it, put new bathrooms in and all that. Trying to work towards rejuvenating that park eventually. I think that's about it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You're wonderful.
All right. If nothing else, Commissioner and staff comments. If we want to start down with you, Cal.
I've got nothing tonight, thanks.
Richard?
Speaking with about the depot, this Friday is the monthly chamber networking breakfast, and an update on the progress and what's going on with the depot will be the presentation. Villagers Restaurant, 7:30 in the morning.
So they're opening early.
Yeah. Chamber breakfast, they always do a nice job for us. $5 for chamber members, and it is open to the community. $7 for non-members for the breakfast from villagers. So.
And that was when?
This Friday.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Lori?
There's just a lot of depot stuff stirring, and we're going to make this happen.
Oh yeah.
Is the railroad ownership any of the issues going on, or?
Well, Katie could probably talk more about that. She's been meeting with the officials and making that happen. I'm just on a fundraiser.
I'll just give a super quick update. So where the building is now, we own the building, we don't own the property, and the rules changed, I believe, in 2009, the safety rules for active rail lines, that you have to be 50 feet or further off of the rails to access any property. And where the depot lies right now is neither from either of the rails. It's too close, and so it's in a precarious position. The only way that we can use that building that we own, that's on the National Historic Register, is to pick it up and move it. And so our intention is to move it about 1,000 feet. And it'll actually come back to the fairly close to the location of the original depot. That's actually the third depot because the other two had burned. So we'll bring it back to its original location. That'll be in the grassy space just across from Broad Street. So it'll be kind of our flagship building. But there's a process, and so the first thing is that we need to acquire some property from both CSX and CN. CSX owns the big grassy piece, and CN owns where a lot of people park. We call it the dirt lot across from the Moose Lodge. There's a slice of that we would need also. So we are in talks and negotiations with both rail companies right now to acquire both of those pieces of property. Once we get the property, then we can move the building. Once we move the building, then we can restore it. And then we can develop all around it to make it kind of a park-like setting with parking and be able to use that beautiful building again. So our holdup right now is with the railroad to try to acquire the property, but we're making some big progress.
Good.
So that's all right.
There is still money from the previous attempt to restore it. There's a substantial start. And we've got promises as long as we follow the guidelines, we make the plan, and we show them what we're going to do and show them that we are doing it. So we've got a lot of avenues. It's really exciting. It's got to get done. It's a 2-year plan in my head.
Margaret? Richard?
I have nothing.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody that did show up. At least we had a quorum where we could move forward and not have all these people show up with not a lot to do.
Sure.
So I guess in moving forward, is there anything from the staff over there?
we're holding a Main Street open house this coming Monday, the 28th, 6:30 p.m. at the Carl Richter Community Center in the community room, and that's kind of reinvigorating the 4 Main Street teams, which is design, organization, promotion, and economic vitality. So meet the teams, come and learn about all the great projects we have in store. 2019 is going to be a big, busy year with a lot of great things happening in our historic downtown. So if you want to be on the front of all of that, come to the Main Street open house and learn about it. Join a team and get involved.
Okay. Charlie?
Nothing tonight, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Have we heard anything, any progress or any movement with the old elementary school that the river?
Last I heard, they're still trying to get on the National Registry.
They're
So they can get those incentives.
kind of at a standstill with that project. There were some legal issues.
I know there's some litigation, but I didn't know if that got
Exactly.
resolved or.
Hasn't been resolved yet. The investors, Vincent Pari, who have a couple different properties, that's definitely still in the mix. Just it's on hold for now. But one thing that we can add, they did purchase an old church, and it's now called the Holly Vault Chapel. And there's beautiful pictures. If you're on Facebook, they posted some pictures. Neat thing is they found the old tin ceiling, and were able to restore that. And so it's a beautiful white chapel where now people can get married. So that was, while there's still, that was on hold, they picked up another project, finished that one. So
Katie, where is that one?
Corner of Oakland and North.
Jill Assembly God Church.
It's actually on North, but right at the corner of Oakland and North.
Have we had any interest or
Or is it
movement?
I believe it's Lake. It's Lake and Oakland. I'm sorry.
They're going to have weddings there.
Oh, okay. That's
What's
better.
going on?
Any interest or movement on the old car wash property that was cleared and
we
seeded?
we had some interest, and I believe there was a purchase order at one time. I'm not sure if that's still in the works, but I'll check into that. I know that if for some reason if that's fallen through, then it will be heavily marketed.
Any movement on the old Joseph Pontiac building?
Yeah.
We heard some murmurings that there was some interest. I don't know if that has turned into anything. I think there may have been negotiations and price and things.
And lastly, the on Saginaw, the used to be a physical therapy building, the daycare center, and then the house that the gentleman 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, put them all into one joint, asset through the planning commission. He talked as if they were going to change what the use was for, and yet nothing has ever come back. And the house, I think they're just renting it out currently.
He purchased it.
Pardon me?
He
It
bought
was
it
sold.
outright.
All right, but I think they're using it and renting it currently, no?
No, he currently bought it.
So they did buy it.
Yes.
Recently, last month or so.
All right, because it's like whatever was going on there, they kept on trashing the side of that and just piling garbage up alongside there, and it was looking
They were
pretty
doing
sad.
some renovations inside there, trying to get it to what they wanted to see when they moved in.
Okay. All right, that's all I have. And from there, I guess we have public comments. If anyone wants one more thing, all right, you step right up.
I don't know if any of you are seniors. I know I am. I admit I am. But anyways, we've had 3 meetings so far with the New Generation Seniors of Holly. It's a new group. It's meeting over in the community room on every Thursday, 1 to 4. And the 3rd Thursday of the month is when the old group, the Hollyhocks, they still meet. Nobody knew that they met until we recently found out. They do meet, and they have a potluck each 3rd Thursday, so they asked us to join them.
Smells delicious every Thursday.
So we will be joining them for their potluck. That's at 12. And then still at 1 to 4, which is our normal every Thursday meeting for the new generation seniors of Holly. We'll go on, and I don't know if we're going to do it every time, but they asked us at least for the first time to do bingo because that's what they like to do, and that's their Thursday. So they did bingo. I wasn't there this last one. But the first two meetings, the first one was just like a question. I tried to get a feel, and they talked about stuff like photography classes or exercise classes, day trips. Definitely big on day trips. They definitely want to do day trips. And from what I understand, there is one already planned for next month, going to the Detroit Institute of Arts. And I guess we're going to be getting maybe that pickleball or whatever it's called, maybe some shuffleboard, but it's something people have been on Facebook and whatever trying to get a group going. So it's kind of a collaboration, not just with the Hollyhocks, but also with a group that meets at the old Zany Janie's. It's now Battle Alley Coffee. There's a group that still meets there. They've been joining with us too. So it's kind of like a collaboration of 3 groups. Tony Brinker is kind of over us right now for like the next 2 months, and then I don't know who's going to take over. But anyways, there is a page on Facebook, New Generation Seniors of Holly. There is that, and that's about it.
Okay. Thank you.
Just wanted to let you know. So tell people.
New generations meet here at Richter?
Yes.
In the in the community center room.
Yep.
I have a question. Doesn't anybody ever think that we might need a senior citizen center in Holly? I mean, everywhere I've lived, we've always had a senior center, and I've not heard one word about us having one in Holly.
That's what we're doing.
This is
right
the
now.
start
This is
of
what
something.
we're doing.
Yep.
That's good to
But
hear.
like I said, I've been trying. I've been blasting it out on Facebook, trying to get the word out, and people are interested. We've had, I think the first meeting was 15, and it there wasn't that much. Well, there was advertisement, but there were some flyers put out, but it's just kind of come together quickly. And then the second meeting we had like 14, and then from what I understand last week they had like 25. So it's
That's good.
Yeah.
but that's with the Hollyhocks group, too. But and each meeting has been totally different from. So if we get everybody there, eventually we're going to grow. And there's a lot of people have been wanting this, so I hope they come and help out. Because people that I had seen complaining so far, I haven't really seen them at these meetings yet. So go figure. Because I had written down their names as I was, reading and then trying to talk to people about getting it started. But where are they? But eventually, they'll come in.
1 to 4 Monday here at Richter.
Thursdays.
And
Thursdays.
Hollyhocks, 3rd Thursday.
Yes.
Yep.
That's at 12. 1 to 4 for the other girl. So yeah, let people know. Thank you.
If no one has anything else, let's adjourn this.
So moved. So moved.
I make the motion to adjourn.
I was told
this
you
meeting.
didn't need a motion to adjourn.
The motion
You
is-
see, and I was doing it, everybody told me, you don't need to do that. You have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
So when I'm making the zoning map, I like to make sure it's at the right scale, and I know
Really?
the preference, right now, the zoning
Huh?
map is at a letter scale. Like a letter, it's a piece of paper. So I want to do one that's a 36 by 24, so you can put it up on the wall, but